Hello, I'm Andrea Roane, and I'm so very pleased to be supporting Habitat for Humanity of Washington, D.C. with this year's Women Build event. In November 2019, I joined DC Habitat for their 30th anniversary celebration. We're so sorry we're unable to be together in person for Women Build this year, but we are looking forward to brighter days ahead. And until we can safely gather together, we'll continue to gather virtually to support important missions like Habitat's. DC Habitat's Women Build is a fundraising, communications, and advocacy effort that aims to shine a light on the challenges that women in need of housing face. We know that women, especially those who serve as the head of their families, and women of color, face obstacles that make accessing stable, affordable housing seem impossible. DC Habitat works alongside local women and their families to create reliable access to affordable homeownership that allows them to build strength, stability, and self-reliance. Stable housing is transformative. It can lead to higher levels of education and wealth for individuals, and strong and stable neighborhoods for generations to come. During today's program, we'll provide you with an update on DC Habitat's accomplishments during the challenging past year. We will showcase some of our homeowners and sponsors, and we will share a critical conversation between the DC Habitat CEO and the Senior Advisor for Housing Finance at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. We'll also hear what's happening on Capitol Hill regarding the fight for affordable housing, especially affordable home ownership, and learn how to get involved. As we begin our program, I'd like to turn the screen over to the woman at the helm of DC Habitat. She has more than 25 years of expertise in affordable housing and finance. In her nearly 10 years with DC Habitat, she has overseen the construction of over 60 homes, heading towards achieving the goal of 200 homes built by 2021. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce the CEO of Habitat for Humanity of Washington, D.C., Susan Slater.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you to everyone watching today. 2020 was a very difficult year for everyone, and especially for those experiencing financial difficulties. Even before the coronavirus pandemic, 1 in 6 households in DC were spending half or more of their income on housing. During the pandemic, having a safe, affordable place to live became even more important for all families, as home took on new meaning while sheltering in place. Home became not only a safe haven to avoid the spread of the virus, it became our office, classroom, sanctuary. The economic fallout from the pandemic has meant even more families are at risk of losing their homes, and families who are already struggling now have even less income to spend on food, healthcare, and other basic necessities. At DC Habitat, we believe everyone deserves a safe, decent home they can afford, and that no family should have to choose between housing and other necessities. Given the ongoing challenges of the pandemic, we're extremely proud of our accomplishments over the past year, and I'd like to share some of those with you. Despite all the issues the year presented, we completed 14 houses that welcome new families to the Habitat community. Our home repair program provided repairs to 50 families in 2020, totaling 187 families served since the start of this program. These repairs generally fall under accessibility modifications such as ramps, handrails, mobility, and aging-in-place support. In our HomeSmart financial education program, we are continuing to work with our partner Freddie Mac to scale our program, allowing more people to benefit from it. To do this, we are converting the HomeSmart program to a digital platform that allows families to access the program on their own schedules from their own homes and enables us to expand the program to a larger audience. We have also secured a multi-year construction pipeline in the DC neighborhoods of Skyland, Deanwood, and Truxton Circle of 35 homes that will allow us to continue to build and adapt the habitat model to urban needs. Despite the obstacles brought on by the pandemic, we at DC Habitat were able to accomplish so much in 2020, and we could not have done any of it without the generosity of our supporters. So on behalf of our board, staff, and volunteers, as well as our homeowners, thank you.
Thank you, Susan. DC Habitat addresses the need for affordable housing in several ways. Low-income families need more affordable houses, so DC Habitat builds. Older adults need safe and accessible housing, so we repair. Lifelong residents of DC are being displaced, so we create or strengthen communities inside the city. DC leaders need input on policies that help working families, so we advocate for effective solutions. And all DC residents need to understand the city's housing crisis, so we educate and engage thousands of volunteers every year. Our home building program is unique in that DC Habitat creates affordable homeownership opportunities for families who face overwhelming obstacles that make owning their own homes seem impossible. We build high-quality, energy-efficient homes and partner with local families to sell them affordably. We work with families to secure affordable mortgages. By reducing down payments and keeping mortgage payments proportional to income, Habitat homeowners are able to buy a home at a cost that's much lower than the average DC rent. We support families throughout the purchase process and then after they move into their homes with homebuyer resources, credit counseling, and post-purchase financial literacy training through our Home Smart program. Volunteers help with construction of the homes to defray the cost otherwise paid to contractors, and homeowners also participate in the building process, giving back 200 to 300 hours of sweat equity building their own home and the homes of their Habitat neighbors. After closing, DC Habitat staff lead post-purchase education classes. This program further safeguards affordable homeownership in the district by helping ensure families successfully remain in their homes. DC Habitat promotes equity by combating the district's racial wealth gap. Homeownership is a primary means for building wealth, but DC's Black and other residents of color have been systemically barred from homeownership opportunities. Through affordable mortgages, DC Habitat helps families without wealth, especially families of color, become homeowners and have the opportunity to build wealth through equity and savings. Through Women Build, our sponsors and partners are investing in more than affordable housing. They're helping build strong and stable neighborhoods where residents can thrive for generations to come. Here to thank our sponsors for their support is Women Build Campaign Chair, Maddie Ford.
For this year's Women Build campaign, we set out to raise $250,000 to build the first 8 homes of our 25-home pipeline for local women and their families here in DC. We are so fortunate to have the support of our corporate sponsors. Thank you to our Blueprint sponsors: Prosperity Home Mortgage, National Presbyterian Church. Additionally, a thank you to our community building sponsors: our hammer and nail sponsors, and our hard hat sponsors. Thank you all for stepping up to help during this extremely challenging year. I'd also like to recognize the members of the host committee for this year's Women Build. Although we were not able to meet in person this past year, you all continue to take my calls, respond to my emails, and to lend your support with our outreach efforts. On behalf of everyone at DC Habitat, thank you for all your hard work. Next up is one of our corporate partners, a true leader on the vital issue of affordable housing in DC's inclusive and sustainable growth. I am pleased to turn the screen over to Monica Mitchell of Wells Fargo.
Hello, my name is Monica Mitchell, Vice President of Social Impact and Sustainability with Wells Fargo. Investing in solutions is key to more people having a safe and affordable place to call home, which is why Wells Fargo is absolutely thrilled to support DC Habitat. The Wells Fargo Foundation, through our Housing Affordability Philanthropy, has made a $1 billion philanthropic commitment to addressing housing affordability solutions by 2025. By combining our business expertise and financial capital, the Wells Fargo Foundation is focused on creating affordable pathways to safe, quality homes with four key strategies: housing stability, increasing the supply of affordable homes, expanding homeownership opportunities, including and especially among people of color, to narrow the homeownership gap, and driving transformation and innovation on the ground in local communities. Wells Fargo supports our local communities through support to organizations such as DC Habitat that align with those four strategic focus areas, with a priority placed on nonprofit programming supporting low to moderate income communities and addressing racial and social equity and accelerating an inclusive economy. DC Habitat is quite honestly a perfect intersection of our priorities because it addresses five interrelated challenges: DC's staggering wealth gap, its lack of affordable housing options, poor living conditions and the related health concerns, gentrification and changing DC's legacy communities, and the challenges of aging in place for older adults. DC Habitat promotes equity by combating the city's striking racial wealth gap, by helping families without wealth, especially families of color, become homeowners and begin to build wealth. DC Habitat eliminates one of the largest barriers of homeownership as well, saving for the down payment, by requiring a modest down payment of $500. Homeowners pay mortgages lower than the average rent, and through education and support programs of DC Habitat, they experience much lower foreclosure rates than the national average. We know that having a home is a transformational process for a family. It provides stability, indignity, and pride of place. Here to tell you more about her family's journey to homeownership, please welcome Shermain.
My name is Shermain. I am an accountant and I have two daughters who are 12 and 6. I became a Habitat homeowner in November of 2020. My living situation before I bought my home was I was renting for about 3 years, and then before that I lived with my mom. We were in a 1-bedroom and then we transitioned over to a 2-bedroom apartment. The 2-bedroom situation that we were in, it was pretty tight. It felt almost like there was no space to just be alone. I can remember being a teenager, living with my mom, living in our government housing, saying that I wanted something more for myself. When I was in my 20s, I wrote down a goal list, and on my goal list, it was home ownership. I wanted to create generational wealth for my kids. I wanted a place where we can call our own. And frankly, I just wanted my little slice of the American dream. I always research programs in DC that helped people out with home ownership and help lower income communities with home ownership, because as we all know, it's really expensive to own and rent in the DC metropolitan area. I tried other home ownership programs in the DC area, but I found that Habitat's programs were just quicker and more streamlined of a process. The feeling of home ownership is a feeling of accomplishment, a feeling of success, a feeling of having my kids look up to me and my entire family. I'm the second person in my family to own a home since the 80s. Now that I have my own home, I have my own room, my girls have their own room, and we all just have our own little sections of the house or our own little sanctuaries we can go to. My favorite part about being a homeowner is just coming home and turning the key to my own home. It's mine. It's mine. I can't describe how excited that makes me feel. Sometimes I just sit on my couch and I just look around and I'm like, wow, I did it. I have something to call my own. And I feel like that transitions over into my girls' thought process on home ownership is they feel like they can achieve it. They can achieve anything because their mom did it. Their mom has a slice of what everyone in America kind of aspires to, and that's ownership. And that's a sense of home and something to call yours. Life has changed in an amazing way. I feel like I've reached the level of success that I wanted to reach since I was probably 25 years old. Since buying my home, I think my financial situation has changed because I'm more budget conscious. I created a will. I also purchased life insurance to leave my kids secure when I'm gone. So it's really taught me financial stability, and it has made me financially responsible. My mortgage is a fraction of what my rent was. I'm able to save more, and I'm also able to pay more into my mortgage so that I can be completed with my mortgage in a shorter period of time. Women Build means empowerment, it means ownership, it means stability, and giving someone a sense of value in the world. To be able to turn the key and come home and sleep in a warm bed, and to know that you're not living on the street or on someone else's couch, it really is a grateful feeling. It's an awesome feeling. Just being able to have that stability, it takes some of the stresses that women go through away. And to actually achieve that and to be able to scratch that off of my list of things that I dream of doing, it just feels amazing.
Joining me for this discussion is Alanna McCargo, the Senior Advisor for Housing Finance in the Office of the Secretary in the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, known as HUD. At HUD, Alanna is responsible for the Biden administration's housing finance initiatives. Prior to joining the administration, she served as a vice president at the Urban Institute, where she was for 5 years, and she's also served as a member of the DC Habitat Advisory Council, among many other housing-related positions. She's a true advocate for affordable home ownership, and we're so fortunate to have this opportunity to speak with her today. Alanna, before we get started, would you like to share a few thoughts?
I've worked with Habitat for Humanity in many capacities over the last decade, and I am obsessed with the mission of this organization and the consistent commitment to making homeownership possible for families who are often shut out of opportunity, especially in markets that are increasingly unaffordable, like Washington, D.C. The Women Build campaign is especially resonant with me, so this is really special. The work of affordable housing and homeownership is hard work, takes tremendous resources, and takes an invested and involved community of stakeholders that requires coordination and work across the entire continuum of housing. That means we have to recognize that if rental housing is not affordable, homeownership will not be possible for families who are strapped by high rents, unable to save, or imagine homeownership as their next step. If building homes and renovating houses is expensive, we also can't afford to create more housing. This is where Women Build really resonates for me, because women are often heads of households, leading the way in securing homeownership, and women of color in particular will drive new homeownership growth in the future, especially Latino women. So I'm excited to be here in this conversation with you, as this is my life's and heart's work. And I'm excited to be in a position with the Biden administration now where we can work together with stakeholders on the policy change and the critical investments that are needed that'll lead us into the future.
Thank you. From your experience at the Urban Institute and now at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, what is your view on the challenges that women face in securing housing?
So it was not all that long ago when a single woman who wanted to buy a house and get a mortgage had to find a man to guarantee it for her. The Urban Institute, as you know, did a lot of analysis, particularly on how people paid their mortgages. We looked a lot at analysis and research over decades of data to see how, and essentially looking at that by gender, revealed that female-only borrowers, a group that is disproportionately minority and lower income, are better at paying their mortgages than men are. And they get no price breaks for their superior performance. In fact, women are denied mortgages at higher rates than men, despite their better track record, and often pay more as if they were higher risk. So, some of the work that we did at the Urban Institute really reflects the disparities and really the need to focus in on what is happening with women when it comes to mortgages and homeownership.
How can we at DC Habitat address these issues? What policy solutions and tools might be employed?
So women have emerged as key home buyers, with single women owning more homes now than single men do, about 1.5 million more, according to surveys. This is despite the gender pay gap and many other barriers to entry, including access to down payments and the growing cost of housing. So policy solutions like down payment assistance and programs that can help create and build more affordable housing supply, like the work that Habitat for Humanity does, will go a long way in addressing the issues women face in accessing homeownership.
Alanna, you already mentioned the importance of home ownership in relation to rental and other housing options. Do you want to talk a little bit about why home ownership is so important for women?
So there's so many so many reasons. One thing I want to mention is how sort of this administration has been looking at the issues of housing and homeownership since they took over in January. If you know, we've learned a lot through this COVID-19 pandemic. We learned that our homes can often need to be our places of business, can be our schools. It's where we need to be, where we need to have kind of basic health needs. And I think it's really important that we think about home a little bit differently, especially after what we've all been through in this over the last year. Most people want to own a home at some point. Many renters feel completely stuck as if home ownership is not an option for them. And that's not right. The very high cost of rents today is a huge barrier for people that could be home buyers, because paying 30 to 50% of your monthly income in rent means that there just isn't enough left over for you after you eat and pay your regular bills to save a substantial amount of money. So this is why down payment support, which is the cost of entry to home ownership, is so crucial. It's also worth mentioning that in so many markets around the country, the cost of home ownership in terms of monthly housing payment can be cheaper than market rents. And also at the same time, households will be able to build up equity in that home if they own it. So just so many things that are sort of at the intersections, and so many families that want to move from renters to owners.
Alanna, you already mentioned a little bit about the racial wealth gap and how Habitat plays a role in closing that gap, especially with certain minority groups. Would you like to expand a little bit on that?
Sure. The racial homeownership gap and the racial wealth gap are linked. Many families, especially Black and Latino households, build their wealth through homeownership and building equity in their homes. In fact, housing equity makes up more than half of the overall net worth for Black and Latino families. So the racial homeownership gap today is quite large. It's actually larger today than it was 53 years ago when the Fair Housing Act was passed. And that has continued to be a problem that has deepened and has a lot to do with our history and longstanding disparities along racial dimensions. So this is an area where the Biden administration has been focused, and where HUD can play a critical role in making access to first-time homeownership accessible through the FHA and mortgage insurance programs and through other down payment assistance vehicles that we think will really help spur more fair and equitable homeownership in the future for all people.
Thank you so much, Alanna. One of the things I want to finally ask you is, how can we just encourage women to be involved in some of the opportunities you talked about and some of these conversations, because a lot of women in some of the populations you talked about just don't know what is out there for them. What kinds of things are you working on to get that conversation going?
Well, first, I would say to everyone watching, speak up, speak out, especially if you think you're being discriminated upon based on gender or race. The field needs to be leveled still, and women must report incidents of discrimination if they're experiencing that, if they're trying to buy a home, if you feel like there's something that's just not quite right. I think that's really important to just speak up. Getting involved in your community, speaking out at community meetings, staying engaged in what's happening in your community as it relates to decisions that are being made, housing policy, what housing's being built in your community. All of that requires community engagement, and I just really encourage women to get involved and stay involved, be part of your homeowners association or your condo board or whatever the case may be, because that's where decisions get made. And those local decisions really do significantly impact the ability for communities to be able to build new affordable housing, in their spaces and bring new members to the community as well. So your voices really matter in those discussions. You mentioned education, and I would just say educating yourself on how these processes work, engaging housing counseling services if you feel like you need to learn more, especially when you think you're ready to buy. Do your homework, on the down payment assistance programs that are available to you through your state. HUD has a directory of housing counseling providers that you can find on our website. So just go to HUD.gov and look for a housing counselor near you. Housing counseling is a really invaluable resource that not enough people use. More women, I also think, could be looking into jobs that are related to housing, whether it's construction, real estate sales, appraisals, and inspections. The industry is very male-dominated, white male-dominated, and there are amazing jobs that women could be doing to really help move the industry to the next level and move it forward. Again, just another reason why I think Women Build is such an important initiative that Habitat undergoes to really get women more intimately familiar with all that goes into construction and all the other aspects of potentially building and owning a home. So,
Alanna, I want to thank you so much. All of your remarks make me think about one of our main slogans, which is build louder. And we want to build louder for women. And I want to thank you for your insights into the challenges facing women in housing, especially getting more women into construction. And now we at DC Habitat are doing everything we can to be part of that solution.
Thank you to the Habitat DC team for the invitation to join you.
Another approach for addressing the affordable housing crisis comes in the form of legislation. DC Habitat is fortunate to be working with Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland and Senator Rob Portman of Ohio on legislative initiatives. We're pleased to share brief messages from Senator Cardin and Senator Portman surrounding the current legislation.
Hi, I'm Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland. Greetings to everyone gathered virtually for the 2021 Women Build celebration. I want to extend a special thanks to Habitat for Humanity of Washington, D.C. for bringing everyone together. Each and every volunteer, community leader, and sponsor has played an important role in this life-changing effort. Everyone deserves a safe, decent, and affordable place to call home and an opportunity to build equity and wealth for their family. This does not change during a global pandemic, but it does make it much more difficult. It's why I was proud to partner again with Senator Rob Portman of Ohio to sponsor the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act. Our bipartisan bill will drive investment in neighborhoods desperate for revitalization and help existing homeowners to renovate and stay in their homes. Our program helps keep neighborhoods affordable for low and moderate income families. This is a winning proposal. President Biden included it in his American Jobs Plan. I want to thank everyone at the Habitat for Humanity for joining in support of our effort. As we emerge from this pandemic, we know that the economic impacts will be with us for years to come. The current federal moratorium on eviction will not last forever, and women, including women with children, will be especially hard hit. This is where Habitat for Humanity steps in to change lives. Your work empowers women through efforts to create safe, decent, and affordable shelter to those in need. You're making our community a better place, one person and one family at a time. Thank you, and stay safe.
Hi, I'm U.S. Senator Rob Portman. I'm really pleased to have the chance to speak with you all today at Habitat for Humanity's Women Build virtual celebration. I'm so grateful for the work Habitat for Humanity does every day in communities around the country to help families in need of finding a home. Thanks to Suzanne Slater for your leadership of this outstanding organization. I always love having the opportunity to volunteer for a build. In fact, participating in a Habitat build is the birthday gift I give myself every year, whether I'm stuck here in D.C., and the D.C. folks have always been great to let me do that, or whether I'm back home in Ohio. Today, though, I'm really pleased to be joining my friend and my colleague, Senator Ben Cardin, to talk about some of the work we're doing here in Congress to help in Habitat's important mission, and specifically a bill we are working on called the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act. We wrote this bill to address a systematic problem when it comes to purchasing and renovating rundown homes in certain rural and urban areas. The costs involved aren't matched by the value of the sale price of the homes when all the work is done. Far too often, this results in lower income families like the ones you all help being priced out of the dream of home ownership. So to address that, we've got this Neighborhood Homes Investment Act. It fixes this by creating a tax credit to cover that difference in cost, therefore making renovating a home a worthwhile investment, even in hard-hit areas. And it's going to ensure that homes constructed or revitalized under the program are sold only to homeowners making less than 140% of the area median income. There's a real potential here to make a big difference for the lower income first-time home buyers that Habitat works to help. We believe this credit could help revitalize 500,000 homes and create $100 billion in development revenue over the next 10 years in these communities with foreclosures and blighted or vacant homes. So it's really about affordable housing and ensuring we can begin to expand that. I want to thank Habitat for Humanity for their support of this important legislation. We look forward to working with them on it, and I look forward to working with Senator Cardin to get it passed this year. Thanks again for all the work you do every day to lift up families in need, and Godspeed in your important work.
Habitat for Humanity and America's low-income families are fortunate to have champions in Congress working to maintain access to decent, affordable housing. Now I'd like to turn the screen over again to the chair of this year's Women Build campaign, Maddie Ford.
Thank you, Andrea. As you heard from CEO Susan Slater earlier, 2020 was a remarkable year for DC Habitat. The pandemic caused us all to reconsider just how much home means to us. For these cost-burdened families, our work in advocating for home affordability and stability has become more important than ever. While we could not work side by side with you this past year, you, our community of supporters, were still instrumental in helping us serve families in need. So thank you for being there for us and our partner families during this difficult year. Now, more than ever, we need you to continue to work with us to push through some critical advocacy initiatives. The Neighborhood Homes Investment Act has been introduced in Congress. This act calls for the creation of a new federal tax credit that will produce new equity investment dollars for development and renovation of housing in distressed urban, suburban, and rural neighborhoods. America's communities will be enhanced by improved property values, increased family wealth, and decreased blight and abandonment. This is something we can all support, and we're asking you to contact your senators to encourage their support of the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act. You can also help by joining DC Habitat in the Cost of Home campaign. Habitat for Humanity is engaging housing advocates, Habitat homeowners, volunteers, and supporters, along with federal, state, and local policymakers to advance access to safe, decent, and affordable homes through the Cost of Home campaign. Please join as we commit to mobilizing our partners, volunteers, and community members across the country to find solutions and help create policies that will allow individuals to meet their most basic needs. Finally, you can work with DC Habitat as we prioritize housing security assistance and mortgage assistance. You can learn more about these initiatives and how you can help by visiting our website at www.dchabitat.org. Thank you so much. With your continued support, we will make a difference for low-income families in the District of Columbia.
Thank you, Maddie. Under your leadership, the Women Build campaign has been a success, and we're so appreciative of all you do. We've come to the end of our program. I'd like to thank Senator Ben Cardin, Senator Rob Portman, Alanna McCargo, Monica Mitchell, Maddie Ford, our homeowner Shermain, and Susan Slater, and the staff and volunteers at DC Habitat for their work on this wonderful and informative program. I'd also like to thank the sponsors of Women Build for continuing their steadfast support of DC Habitat throughout this challenging year. And I'd like to thank everyone who has tuned in to watch our program. I encourage you to remain connected with DC Habitat and to get involved if you aren't already. Please visit the DC Habitat website to learn more about their initiatives and ways you can support the drive for affordable housing in the District of Columbia. We look forward to gathering in person in the coming months. Thank you again for your support of Habitat for Humanity of Washington, D.C. and Women Build. You truly are making a difference on the vital issues of affordable housing in D.C.'s inclusive and sustainable growth. Please stay safe.